Welcome to the restaurant at the end of the world. This is Huset. 78 degrees north of the equator, the menu features local fare like reindeer, foraged mushrooms, sea kelp, bearded seal, and blue cheese covered in ash. The head chef, Philip Gemzel.
For me, it's a lot about wild flavors, but it's also about simplicity. It's definitely challenging to be in Svalbard. When you discover something new, it's always a rush. There is something to be excited about all the time, which is fantastic. We don't have anything here, nothing is growing. There's no trees, there's no vegetables. There's no farms of anything. There's no pigs on the island. So we gotta deal with the things we have around us. All the protein we get from our hunters and trappers here in Svalbard. All the fish that we use, all the chefs goes fishing together with the fishermen. It's a different respect to what you do, really.
The lack of resources has served as inspiration to dream up new tastes, textures, and ingredients.
It's about making whatever you have taste as good as possible and focus on that ingredient. This is Svalbard reindeer. It's lightly smoked, served with an onion vinaigrette that we make with Norwegian ice wine. So this is a mushroom soup made with local mushrooms here in Svalbard. There's not many things growing in Svalbard, and this is one of very, very few. I wanted to kind of recreate that environment of where the mushrooms are. When we found them, it's a very, very earthy flavor.
Finding inspiration in nature, creating dishes based on seasonality and availability, modern chefs like Philip are hoping to inspire a sustainable future. The food industry contributes to some of the greatest challenges facing humanity. Climate change, water scarcity, dwindling resources, increased chronic disease, and overpopulation. And the food of the future is going to be as different as the world itself. As cooks, scientists, foodies, and citizens begin to look forward, what will be the future of food? On a remote island of the Svalbard archipelago, halfway between Norway and the North Pole, scientists are making plans for the food of the future.
If you fly into Svalbard, the only thing you will see is ice, 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 and ice. If you are lucky, you might see one of the 3,500 polar bears. I'm pretty sure you will see some of the 12,000 funny-looking reindeers that live here. But except this, there's really nothing much in Svalbard. Nothing grows here. Except we then have the Svalbard Global Seed Vault.
This seed citadel holds almost 1 million samples of plant species, originating from almost every country in the world. It is our largest and most diverse collection of crop species. Marie Hager is head of the Global Crop Trust. She and her colleagues have made global crop diversity their mission for a very important reason.
Our food system is in deep trouble. Our mandate is to safeguard the diversity of crops around the globe. As of today, 95% of the food we eat actually come from 30 species. 60% of calorie intake comes from only 3 plants, from rice, from wheat, and from maize. This makes us extremely vulnerable. We have a desperate need to develop a food system that is more sustainable and more resilient. The Svalbard Global Seed Vault is one piece in the global puzzle we are putting together to safeguard crop diversity. It's more important than ever because of climate change.
Carved 500 feet into the side of a mountain, standing 426 feet above sea level, this bastion of hope was built to withstand rising tides and temperatures.
You walk through a tunnel approximately 120 meters long. Then when you pass actually 4 or 5 doors, you'll come into a huge white hall that I like to call the cathedral. In there you see an extremely icy door. Behind that door, with all these beautiful ice crystals, you will find just boxes of seeds. We have crops from absolutely all over the world. It's actually fascinating to think about that is both the history of agriculture and potentially the future.
Contained in each of these boxes are seeds, which represent nearly 12,000 years of hard work by our farming forefathers and mothers. Though there are more than 1,700 gene banks storing seeds around the world, they can be vulnerable to war, natural disasters, and other threats.
Extremely important genetic material has gone lost. And we in the Crop Trust are concerned to conserve each one of these. We desperately need to breed plants that can stand higher temperature, higher salinity in the soil. We know that the plants we are growing today, they take far too much water, so we need to develop plants that can give good yields without the same amount of water. We know we will have to fight new pests and new diseases as a consequence of climate change. And we of course always need to be concerned about nutritional value and taste. All of these things can be managed if we are wise enough to safeguard the diversity that we have, because one of them might have the trait that we need today or tomorrow, in 50 years or 200 years, to develop plants that can stand new environments.
As we blast into a 21st century rife with complex challenges, food diversity is one of humanity's most potent weapons in the fight against hunger. Diversity of diet also gives us an opportunity to achieve new levels of health and nutrition by taking advantage of delicious foods that are available in our own backyards.
Historically, we have eaten roughly 7,000 types of plants, and many of these still exist, and we should absolutely find some of these forgotten foods. Many of them are exciting, they can have high nutritional value, and as a chef, a cook, somebody who cooks dinners for your family every day, it could give a lot of inspiration.
But in the future, humanity will have to tackle yet another rising challenge: food access. By 2050, it is projected that 70% of the world's 9.7 billion people will live in cities. So who will be growing our food? Throughout the world, hungry young entrepreneurs are tackling this problem. By engineering solutions for the future, they are blurring the lines between the rural and urban approach to food. New York City. Ask any New Yorker. This is the center of the universe. An archetype of all things metropolitan. Even weeds struggle to grow in this tough environment. But a new revolution is blossoming here.
What we hope at Square Roots is that we're really unleashing this new generation of entrepreneurs and these amazing farmers.
Square Roots in Brooklyn is planting the seeds of a big idea. Right here, in an industrial parking lot. Business people, like Tobias, are trying to change how people get their produce. People want local food. And with 70% of the world's population to live in cities by 2050, entrepreneurs will need to find a way to satisfy urban demand.
Square Roots is really an attempt to bring local, real food to everyone. Today, most of us are at the mercy of what we call the industrial food system, which ships in high-calorie, low-nutrient food, often from thousands of miles away. We've lost connection with that farmer. What we want to do at Square Roots is start to grow food right in the middle of the neighborhood, next to the people that are going to eat the food. We're sat inside of a 320 square foot shipping container right now. It's a standard 40-foot shipping container. This was probably on a boat to China 2 years ago. We've been able to refurbish it and turn it into a farm. We're growing vertically and then racking our fields vertically, which means we're essentially growing food in 3 dimensions instead of 2 dimensions. We're probably growing about the equivalent of a 2-acre farm's worth of food in here.
Right now, Square Roots is a collection of 10 shipping container farms that house over 50 different products, including kale, basil, mint, and even strawberries. And there are companies transforming agriculture on an even bigger scale. Industry giant Aero Farms is located right across the river from Manhattan.
We're standing here in Newark, New Jersey. This is actually in an old steel factory. We are actually the largest vertical farm in the world. We started Aero Farms inspired by some of the world's challenges in water. 70% of our world's water, fresh water, goes to agriculture. 70% of our water contamination comes from agriculture. So if one wants to solve water, one has to solve agriculture.
Aero Farms is applying cutting-edge technology to the ancient traditions of farming. They use a form of hydroponics they call aeroponics. Through clever engineering, the team has built an indoor farm that uses 95% less water than field farming, 0 pesticides, and they grow 365 days a year.
We grow without sun, without soil. Instead of sun, we use LEDs, light-emitting diodes. Plants don't need sun, they need spectrum. So we study spectrums that optimize photosynthesis, and then building on that, we deliver nutrients, minerals, and elements that are in the soil through a spray.
Every one of the million seeds planted per year provides precise computer-monitored data.
This is a product that's about 3 days old. We actually know, based on all the information, there's sensors, there's monitors, we're collecting millions of data points every single day about what's happening with the crop. We can actually see what's happening on day 2, day 5, and ultimately what's going to be happening on day 12 of harvest. So this really gives us a line of sight in terms of how do we ensure the right quality. So we think of ourselves as plant whisperers, thinking about what are the nutrients, what's the right light, what's the right environment, and creating the perfect environment for the plant. This kind of thing out in the field may take 30 to 45 days to grow, and we can grow in 12 to 16 days. That means up to 30 harvests a year. It's 390 times more productive per square foot on an annualized basis.
But data and efficiency will only go so far. Foodies want their veggies nutritious, crunchy, and packed with flavor.
From an organoleptic, from a tasting, from a sensory standpoint, what's exciting is that we're able to accentuate different flavors. It's really kind of like a wine flight, if you will, of flavors. So our baby kale is sweet, our watercress is really zesty, our spicy mix has these incredibly bold, peppery flavors. At the end of the day, we're farmers, we're passionate about food, and what's exciting is that we now have ways of using technology to be able to have a better product.
But let's face it, as delicious and healthy as greens are, humans crave protein. And our insatiable taste for one thing has drastically altered our health and environment. Meat. 59% of American cropland is devoted to corn and soybeans, the majority of which is used to feed livestock. It takes 1,800 gallons of fresh water to produce just 1 pound of beef. And the production of meat is responsible for 14.5% of human-linked greenhouse gases. Quite simply, meat is an ecological disaster.
Nowadays, the big push environmentally is climate change. And we've known since 2006 that animal agriculture causes more greenhouse gases than all transportation combined. And yet, something that we can actually do something about actively, consciously right now is making food choices that make a difference.
It's a major part of our diets. Worldwide, we consume 92 pounds of meat per person per year. But there are pioneers offering alternatives to our delicious addiction. Some see meat substitutes as the answer.
We can put the feed that we feed the animals in and we get very tasty, juicy, plant-based meat.
A few innovative scientists think the solution is so-called clean meat, grown in petri dishes. Others believe that there's an easy and natural source of protein right under our feet. Insects. Though reviled in the West, ants, crickets, grasshoppers and worms are an important and delicious source of protein in parts of South America and Asia.
Natural? Oh. I kind of love eating insects, so here at the Chapelinas, they're grasshoppers. Really nice, like nutty, earthy flavor, and with the salt and the lime, they almost come across like a olive or kind of a caper or something like that with a really intense flavor. But if you haven't tried insects, these are a great one to try first. These ones have garlic and chili on them, but super crunchy. The inside's a little soft, but really salty, and yeah, they're really amazing. I love these things.
I think everyone here has just been programmed that insects are something you smash with a shoe when you see them. I was guilty to that as well, but I did keep an open mind, and after tasting it, then seeing how intense these flavors were and how it was a whole new, I guess, flavor palette of things that you could use. It's, you know, not only nutritious, it's also really flavorful, and, you know, as a chef, you'd be doing yourself a disjustice to not delve into these ingredients.
So these are gusanos. They're grubs that grow inside of the agave that you make mezcal from. It's often served with oranges on the side of mezcal. They're super duper tasty.
I definitely think that eating insects is part of the future. Not only because it's fun and exciting and delicious, I think that for the green footprint that's left.
There's a whole nother world of flavor there. I mean, if grasshoppers taste this good, who knows what all the other insects taste like? I don't know.
And insects are ready to be grown at an industrial scale.
The key thing is sustainability. In this crate alone, there's roughly 50,000 little insects. So in this area, we have, I would say, 2,000 of these crates. So that's a whole lot of food in a small area.
At this protein farm in the Netherlands, farmers are breeding crickets, grasshoppers, and very juicy buffalo mealworms. Insect proteins can be ground down into enriched flours and made into products like bread and pastas.
These are the little creatures. As said, they're highly nutritious. What a lot of people talk about, of course, is protein. This is sort of high quality protein. Why? Because it has all 9 essential amino acids. Then when you look at other micronutrients, so vitamins, vitamin B12, for example, is a very interesting one, because if you're a vegetarian and you say, look, I want to eat less meat, or I don't want to eat traditional meat anymore, this could be a very good alternative. Unsaturated fats, that's also a big one if you compare it to traditional meat. The fats in the insects are healthier. And then of course you have certain minerals. Think about iron, think about zinc. You don't use antibiotics, hormones or pesticides. And really that's a major one, because that's a big issue in traditional livestock.
And it's not just the nutritional value of insects which has food entrepreneurs excited.
Insects are a sustainable source of protein because they are very efficient in terms of feed conversion. They don't use a lot of feed. They're very efficient in terms of water. They don't use a lot of water. They're very efficient in terms of land use. They don't use a lot of land. And they don't produce a lot of greenhouse gas emissions.
Insects may sound like a strange staple of the future. However, these alternative sources of protein could have a positive impact on both our health and environment. But many pioneers think that taking environmental and ethical action one step further is the key to saving the future of food. Approximately 5% of the US, or 16 million people, are vegetarian. About half of those are vegan, and this number is rapidly growing.
The reasons for going vegan rest on a three-legged stool. We start with animal compassion. This was where veganism began. Then, a low-fat, plant-based diet is the only way of eating that has ever been shown to reverse coronary disease, and we know that heart disease is the #1 killer of both women and men in the United States and much of the developed world. Then the third is the environment.
A revolution in veganism has exploded onto the scene, and it's no longer for a select few. That's the message of 30-year vegan and author Victoria Moran.
We're not all celebrities. We're not all people who look like we could be on the cover of the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. We're also not leftover hippies and leftover punk rockers. We're all kinds of people. As a health educator and vegan coach and author, I advocate a high green, high raw, high energy kind of lifestyle. It means that we're having lots of beautiful, colorful food. And we know that the antioxidants, those great phytochemicals that are supposed to ward off degenerative disease, are found in the colors of the fruits and vegetables. Your shopping cart and your plate should look like a Christmas tree, mostly green with splashes of other bright colors. So you want to have lots of raw foods, lots of fruit, and beans. Beans are amazing. And interestingly enough, dark leafy greens pack a nutritional wallop, actually have per calorie as much protein as beef.
Evidence of the importance of the plant-based diet goes back decades.
The China study was called by the New York Times the Grand Prix of epidemiology because it was the biggest look at human nutrition ever taken. It was a 20-year study that started in the lab at Cornell with Dr. T. Colin Campbell. The takeaway from the China study that even the researchers did not expect was that the more animal food consumed, the more disease. The more plant foods consumed, the more health.
Based on this scientific evidence, Dr. Campbell proposed a golden rule for eating.
The term whole food plant-based diet was coined by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. It means a diet based entirely on whole foods from the plant kingdom: vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, beans, and some nuts and seeds.
The benefits of this diet are evident in some of the world's longevity hotspots. Places like Greece, Costa Rica, Sardinia, and Japan. In rural China, many 70-year-olds have the same blood pressure, 110/70, as the average 16-year-old American. In rural Kenya, where the population only feasts on meat on very rare occasions, blood pressure actually goes down with age, instead of up. Each of the longest living people in these areas enjoy a diet largely made up of whole grains, vegetables, soy products, and aquatic protein. These diets are simple and are linked to our past. A move back towards a predominantly plant-based diet and away from a meat-focused industrial system would be a huge step in alleviating many of the health and environmental problems we are battling today. This is just one of the many lessons we can learn from the history of food. And to understand our food is to understand our shared story.
The reason I like studying the history of food is the ability of food to take you back in time. It transports you in a way that very few other things can. If you can experience a meal that might have been eaten by Henry VIII, Marco Polo, you can put yourself there in a way that you can't in other ways. It's a fragment of the past that we can put in our mouths, that we can smell, we can touch. I just don't know any other way that time travel can be so immediate and so physical.
For 2 million years, food has been so much more than sustenance.
We eat some 80,000 meals in a lifetime. Humans have evolved to see much more in food than mere survival. It's cultural, it's social, it's oftentimes a ritual in a religious way or simply in how we structure our day. So much is built around meals, around eating. So I think it's important as we go forward making some of these changes that are absolutely necessary that we keep these ritual aspects and these social aspects intact. We need them.
And while the histories of food have been written, the battles for its future are just beginning.
In everyday society, food seems like a pleasure, something that is just part of life and we can enjoy it. But if you live in nature, food is the necessity. It is important to reflect that in the end, survival depends on food. In the West, we've almost forgotten that. Nowadays, more people have nutritional problems from being overfed than being underfed. But nevertheless, there's something like 1 billion people in the world for whom food security is always a problem. And they are the ones that are in closer touch with the reality of us as a species than we are in the West.
The decisions we make will dictate the future of the planet and our species.
The future of food is going back to our roots, back to eating the simple, natural foods that grow up out of the ground. When this happens, I think that we just might save this planet and people's health besides.
So there are lots of policy changes we need to make. But then there's the individual consumer, an individual eater. You know, what do I do at home to make food more sustainable, to increase the odds that we have enough food in 100 years? One scenario that people tend to talk about is diversifying all of our food. We need resilience in our food system. We need to all eat local. But if we realistically think about the future, nobody really imagines we're going to convert to a system where all food is local.
Come on, honey pots. Come on, gal.
And so I think what a more reasonable argument is that we need to increase the ability of local food to be part of our story. If you can afford it, buying more local food. buying more varieties of the food you eat. Ask for varieties you've not seen before, especially if those are native to the region in which you live.
The future of humankind is intrinsically linked to the future of our food. Vertical farming, seed vaults, and edible insects cannot save us on their own. We are at the beginning of a new age where we must reinvent the food systems of the last century. The revolution is already underway. So grab a plate, load it up, but whatever you choose, consider the past, present, and future of food.